So Cenk, you and I just started sort of talking about the they-them ad that Trump ran and a bunch of other stuff, and the conversation just sort of unfolded. So you're going to pick up here kind of midstream with Cenk and I already engaged in a conversation about the future of the Democratic Party. So I hope you enjoy.
I don't want progressivism to be known as Bane from Batman series.
Yeah.
Where we're known as the guys who let all the criminals go.
Right.
I'm like, where's the justice in that?
So my view, which is probably similar to yours, is like right now all the litmus tests, and this largely comes out of like actually the Hillary Clinton and the neoliberal approach to politics. All the litmus tests are around social issues in the Democratic Party. You can be pretty right-wing on economic policy. It's not really a problem. You know, you can be very pro-corporate.
Yeah.
I think it should be the exact reverse. I think the litmus test should be around economic issues.
Goddamn right.
And then, you know, personally, I'm like pretty left on almost every issue, but I have no problem with having people in the tent who are pro-life, who are pro-gun, who have different views on the border crime than I do. But the litmus test has to be like, fuck the billionaires. That's basically my view of the party.
Totally.
So where I get frustrated in the conversation is when like the South Moultons of the world are instantly like, well, it's trans people. You know, it's like, well, you know, if your only assessment from this is to like throw trans people under the bus and you don't have, that's very convenient for the donor class, that's very convenient for the powers that be in the Democratic Party. That doesn't require anything of them. So I'm not saying those issues aren't like, you know, challenging for the Democratic Party to deal with. But if your only instinct is like to blame the left yet again when the left had nothing to do with this campaign, like I'm very suspicious of that.
So I actually 100% agree with you. Thank you so much, Mac.
Thank you.
But I don't want us to live in non-reality. And non-reality is saying that ad didn't hurt us. When both sides said definitively, according to our internal numbers, it was fucking devastating, right? So like, that's not the number one reason, as I said there.
But I think the thing for me is you have to ask the deeper question of like, okay, why did that ad hurt? Because why did that ad hurt? Because Bernie has the same position on transgender issues, but that ad would not work against Bernie. Okay, and the reason is because he actually. Like, people are not going to be confused that Bernie Sanders' top priority is fighting against rich people and fighting for you. They're not going to be confused about that. So you're right. If you're running a Kamala Harris, that ad's going to be a fucking problem for her because she doesn't really stand for anything. And so people can be very easily convinced that, like, oh, she cares about a bunch of bullshit that I don't support and I don't care about. But if you have a candidate who has a story that can compete with the Trump, the left populist story, and narrative and credibility of actually fighting for those things, then you can carry some cultural issues that, may not be that popular.
So you could do the Hassan strategy if you, and I agreed with him, and that's what I would have done. If you have actual policies, like you're saying.
That's right.
So you could, because then you could say, hey, this is a distraction from $15 minimum wage and universal health care, et cetera. But Kamala couldn't say it's a distraction from anything because she doesn't believe in anything.
That's right.
Right? So that's why I was saying the ad was a perfect combination of what was wrong with the corporate Democrats and the extreme left. Because the corporate Democrats stripped her of any real substance to run on, right? So then all that was left was the extreme left positions that she took on into 2020. Right? So that's my opinion.
I totally agree with that. I totally agree with it. I don't think you can say like the ad didn't matter at all. But I think it's important to understand why she was vulnerable to that ad and a Bernie Sanders or an Andy Bashir wouldn't be.
I'll tell you, so I agree with all that. I will say that I think Bernie 2020 was more susceptible to it than Bernie 2016.
Agreed. So we've been talking here to Cenk Uygur, obviously, of TYT and many other wonderful distinctions as well. But lucky to have you in studio today. And we, started talking and recording, so we'll just include that front part in the conversation as well. Great to have you.
All right. Great to be here, Krystal. Appreciate it.
I'll give you the official welcome now. So you've been making a lot of waves.
I love to make waves.
You've been stirring the pot, sir.
That's what I am. I'm a pot stirrer.
Yes. And I was telling you, Kyle and I both enjoyed Jinxgiving.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We were listening to it on the way back from New York. One thing I wanted to talk to you about is I want to get into the stuff with you and Elon, and Bernie's chimed in there, and your sort of general approach to the Trump administration, which, tell me if I'm wrong, feels different than how you approach things in 2016. We can
Yes.
talk a little bit more about that. And kind of emblematic of that, if you guys could put Cenk's tweet up on the screen and we can use this as a jumping off point. So you said, I've been trying to figure out why I'm more optimistic now than I was before the election, even though I was so against the guy who won. I know now MAGA is not my mortal enemy, neither is the extreme left. My mortal enemy is the establishment, and they have been defeated. So there's a few pieces of this that I have some questions about. But I guess just off the top, I think you and I both think that Trump is a fascist. In fact, I think we both argued with our co-hosts about this rather memorably. What makes you optimistic now that we have the fascist headed back to the White House?
Yeah, it's a couple of things. So number one, why did I call him a fascist? I'm very clear on this, right? Because he did a fake elector plot to overthrow the Democratic elections in 2020, right? And he said to terminate the Constitution afterwards. A lot of right-wingers don't know that. Like when I read him that quote, they're like,
don't.
no, really? And then they read it and they can't believe it that's because he doesn't care about democracy, doesn't care about the Constitution, et cetera, right? So I have those same exact concerns. Those concerns have not left. But the one thing that happened in this election was that he won the popular vote. And I noticed right-wingers switching from, oh, we're not a democracy, we're a republic, right?
Yeah.
To like, yeah, let's go democracy.
Suddenly free and fair elections exist, right?
Yeah. And suddenly they're in favor of democratic elections. So great, wonderful. Because my number one concern is that he's not going to leave office. I'm less concerned about that now, okay? So maybe I'm wrong about that, and if I'm naive about that, then I'll own up to it, et cetera.
Let me just say, though, so for me personally, yes, I continue to be somewhat concerned he won't leave office. But my issue with the fake electors plot and all of the things that he tried to pull during that time is that it was indicative of, an attitude, an authoritarian approach to government.
Yes.
That doesn't just apply when he's trying to leave office. So, for example, he wanted to shoot protesters famously in the leg during the Black Lives Matter protests. And he, at that time, had some, institutions around him. And I think it was Mark Milley in particular was like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
My fear this time is he doesn't have those people around him anymore. And each of the institutions that held him back last time, Supreme Court, the Senate, the Department of Justice, the Pentagon, all of those, there's been a concerted effort to make sure that this time he is able to indulge his worst and most fascistic impulses. So that's why I almost feel like I've traveled like the opposite journey as you, where in 2016 I was more like, maybe who knows what we're going to get out of this. This time I'm actually more concerned, especially because you have that Supreme Court immunity decision, which really does kind of give him carte blanche.
Okay, so I'm going to get to the irony here, right?
Okay.
So why am I thinking the other way?
Yeah.
But first, let me double down on what you're saying. Kash Patel's a disaster. Pete Hegseth is a disaster. I actually thought Matt Gaetz was a mixed bag because he is actually anti-war and anti-corruption, but of course he has a terrible personal life.
Yeah.
Right.
But him being a mess might have actually been a good thing because he probably wouldn't have been that effective. But anyway.
Right. So the labor secretary is great given the Trump administration possibilities.
Given the limitations,
right.
yeah.
And then you've got the Team Israel, Marco Rubio, Stefanik. So I'm not in. Other than the labor secretary, I'm not interested in any of this, right? So, and you're right, the Supreme Court has allowed him to be above the law, but on top of that, he has no accountability left. What are they going to do, impeach him? What are they going to do, arrest him? Right? No accountability, the brakes are all, and I agree with you, the establishment was a brake in the car, now that brake has been taken out. So what in the world am I thinking being slightly optimistic? Well, there's two parts to it. One is the establishment being defeated. We got to come back to that because that's so important.
Okay.
But on Trump, the new brake in the car, and this is me out on a limb, okay, is right-wing populists. So, okay, I can see you're grimacing, okay.
Listen, I am, the show I do, right? And I love soccer. And, but I am also very skeptical that movement has significant sway or influence with Trump. But go ahead, make your case.
Okay, so I think that's wrong. So, number one, this is a different MAGA base than in 2016. The 2016 MAGA base was Trump is demigod. Whatever Trump says is by definition brought down to us from the heavens and will never be challenged. So I had no interest in that base, right? And it was filled with old school Republicans, some establishment guys, but not that many, but still they were hanging in there. Then they had the religious guys who are like, yeah, let's go kill everyone in the Middle East so Jesus can come back and stuff.
Like Mike Huckabee.
Yeah, but those guys have lost a lot of power within that base. So now within the right-wing base.
I mean, Pete Hegseth, sorry, I'll let you finish, but Pete Hegseth, Mike Huckabee, like these people
I know,
have been put in, Mike Waltz.
But Krystal, Huckabee is Team Miriam, right? So she's the one.
He's Team End Times.
Okay, yeah, I know. So Miriam Adelson got Marco Rubio, Stefanik, Huckabee, and Walz in.
Yeah.
Those are all neocons, war hawks.
Hegseth too.
Yeah, and Hegseth with kill all the Muslims. I mean, I'm not unclear about that.
Yeah.
And I know that in a lot of ways I'm in the crosshairs, right? But don't discount the bros, okay? So the bros have brought in a huge new part of his base. And don't discount the moderates that are so sick of the Democratic Party that they flipped over, moderates, independents, to Trump. And they're not looking to deport every human being in America that isn't, evangelical Christian. They're not looking, the bros don't even agree on abortion with the Republican Party, right? So like when you talk about Joe Rogan and Portnoy and all those guys, we have our disagreements with them, no question, right?
Yeah.
But those guys are breaking the car. If let's say they do what one of Trump's potential picks was threatening to do, which is deport and denaturalize and arrest Mehdi Hasan. Right? That's a specific threat that one of the potential appointees had, right?
Who said that?
I think Mike Davis.
Okay.
So he was being considered for attorney general. And so, by the way, good news, he didn't pick him, but Kash Patel says things like that, Hegseth says things like that. I think if they go to do that, and this is where people you got me on tape, you'll say, Cenk was so naive. That's when I think the Rogans of the world will come out and go, what are you doing? Really? I thought we were against cancel culture. I thought we were for freedom. You don't agree with Mehdi Hasan's position on Israel, so we're going to denaturalize him, a thing that doesn't even exist? No, I think they're going to say no, okay? And here's the absolute litmus test.
Okay.
On Israel, so Team Israel, Team Miriam will drive him towards war. Today, Donald Trump said that he's going in that direction.
Yeah.
He said that there's going to be hell to pay for the Palestinians and for the entire Middle East if the hostages aren't returned. I don't know what more hell they could live in, right?
Exactly.
But that's Trump saying, I will murder anyone on behalf of Israel, okay? And I will start any war on behalf of Israel. So am I right or am I wrong? We might find out instantly. Because for the moment being, they're saying, the right-wing populists, oh, no, Trump would never do a war in the Middle East. No way. But he's a tough guy, and he's going to threaten them, and he's going to get the hostages back. But what I'm trying to explain to them is, and I had this conversation with Rudy Giuliani at the RNC. Brother, when you say, oh, he's threatening them, so that's good negotiation. But what if somebody calls his bluff? And in the case of the Palestinians, they don't have a choice. Because what Trump is saying is, in order to get the hostages back, Israel wants to ethnically cleanse and take half of Gaza. No Palestinian will ever agree to that, right? So Trump is threatening a giant war in the Middle East. If he does it, we're going to find out if I'm right or wrong. Because at that point, I think the right-wing populists and the bros go, no, brother, I didn't elect you to be a worse neocon than Biden.
Fair enough, and we'll see. But I'll tell you why I'm very skeptical. Because we already knew Trump's record from his first term. Like, he was not anti-war. And he was extremely hawkish towards Iran.
But his base is anti-war.
He was very, pro-Israel. And so this was already out there, right? And yet you still had people like RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard who were claiming he was anti-war, even though they had said, both of them, totally contradictory things previously. And also claiming that he's anti-censorship and pro-free speech. I mean, to me, that's just utterly preposterous. This is someone who wants to tighten the libel laws, who wants to criminalize flag burning. The Republican Party has launched a wave of bills across the country to crack down protests, et cetera. And so even in spite of all of that, they still continue to hold him out as some, beacon of free speech and beacon of anti-war dovishness. And so when I see that, and I see there's already been this, ability to erase all of the things that he's done in the past and pretend he is something that he's not, it's hard for me to imagine that dynamic changing. But we can put a pin in that, because we are going to see, soon enough what the reaction is going to be. Because I do want to get to this piece about the establishment. Because the other part that I have a question about here is you say the establishment has been defeated. And I just say, even in the Democratic Party, I think they have been dealt a blow. I think you see that in MSNBC's cratering ratings. I think that creates an opportunity, a possibility. but I don't think they've been defeated. I think it's very possible we end up with Pete and Gavin, next time around in the Democratic primary. These people are very resilient. I think you have a lot of, affluent liberals who will think that they could be the answer to the problems, et cetera. They still have a lot of money power. But on the Republican side too, for me, the ultimate final boss establishment is the billionaires who rig the rules for their own benefit. And the billionaires have basically never been more blatantly in control than right now. Elon Musk is a perfect example of this, but we can actually put this next element up on the screen, guys. Trump has the wealthiest cabinet in history. I think there are 6 billionaires so far that he's picked to be part of his administration. And so, to me, again, this is the ultimate establishment, and they are fully in control of what's going to happen in the Trump administration.
Okay, one more, going back to Trump's problems and then the establishment.
Yeah, okay.
So I agree with you on all that. He's been hypocritical on every one of those issues, censorship, and he said about in his first term, I don't want poor people in my cabinet.
That's right.
He said, I like rich people,
yeah.
right? Mm-hmm. So he's been trying to get into that elite club his whole life. So the idea that he's against the elites is kind of funny. He is, but only because he's jealous.
He's against cultural elites,
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood, academia.
No,
he's not against the rich.
True. He's not. That's not even true. He'd love to be in Hollywood.
Oh, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And
that's
he
how
started
he
a fake university, right?
Yeah.
So, was he perceived as against the establishment? Yes, right?
Yeah.
So that's when is the establishment annihilated? No, of course not. Are they going to make a comeback? Of course. The empire is going to strike back in 2028.
Yeah.
But the empire struck back so many times. It struck back in 2016, 2020, 2024. And so maybe 2028 is, to extend this needless analogy, is the return of the Jedi, right? And so I'm not under any illusion that the establishment is gone, right? But was Kamala Harris the more establishment candidate? Yes, of course she was.
Sure.
Right? And so did she lose? Yes. And as I explained in another tweet in that thread, it's not just that Kamala Harris lost. Some Hillary Clinton lost, right? Joe Biden nearly lost. Mm-hmm. So it's not that. It's that mainstream media, which is the main weapon of the establishment, is now greatly reduced in its influence. Before, we could not get past them in a Democratic primary. Bernie almost had it in 2016, but certainly in 2020 when he won the first 3 states, and mainstream media defeated him with their lies and propaganda, right? Oh, he's going to execute people in Central Park, he's a Nazi, et cetera.
Yeah.
So the mainstream media guys are the worst liars in the world. They lie way worse than even right-wing media.
I don't know about
that. Okay, we can have that discussion. I think you cannot find 2 bigger liars in America than Joe Scarborough and Whoopi Goldberg.
I mean, but I hear you. But I also have been kind of blackpilled on a lot of independent media, because that tenant media situation where, Tim Pool and whoever else were taking random sketchy money to put out whatever propaganda they were told to put out. I just, I don't see what has grown up on the right in the independent media space as actually being better than the mainstream press.
I totally disagree with you.
While
I'll tell you why.
While I feel like what I agree with you on is there is a possibility that exists now that didn't before. And so I feel I guess what I relate to in your tweet is I would say I feel energized because there is a possibility that wasn't there, that is there now. I think the most likely outcome is that things continue to get worse. That's why I don't feel optimistic, because what I see over the next 4 years is you're probably going to have, a lot of cruelty towards immigrants. You're likely to have, another inflationary spiral if he does, half of the tariffs he's talking about. You could very easily have more chaos in the Middle East. We're already seeing it. More brutality in the Middle East. That's almost certainly going to happen. You could have some giant crypto bubble as possible, avian flu. There's all kinds of things that I think could be horrible and brutal over the next 4 years, and I can't look at that. I would love to feel optimistic that there's going to be a light at the end of the rainbow. And like I said, I do feel energized, but optimistic is just not. I would love to be there, but I'm not.
So let me agree and disagree in part.
Okay.
So first of all, I agree with your facts. So when we're talking about online media, are the Russians involved? Are there fracking billionaires that are financing shows?
Yeah.
Billionaire X and Billionaire Y, and do some of those shows totally serve those interests?
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're reading the ads themselves.
Yeah.
So there's not even the appearance of an arm's length distance. from the advertisers and the money.
I get all that and I grant all that. Okay, so why then, given those facts, am I more optimistic about online media than mainstream media? Because mainstream media is a prison. And it's a prison in the past you could not break out of. There's guardrails. You are not allowed to say things outside those guardrails. You cannot talk about how the donors obviously control all the politicians. Obviously. You cannot talk about how Israel obviously controls Washington and Washington's occupied territory. It's so obvious. But if you say you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, I hate that prison. I despise that prison of lies that is establishment media, okay? So now in online media, you got the Russians, you got this, you got wild and woolly, crazy stuff, you got people I disagree with on the extreme left, on the extreme right. It's a mess in online media, and I love it, okay? That's the jungle, but Krystal, that's our jungle, okay? So we started this jungle at the Young Turks, and Breaking Points and Young Turks are in those same woods.
Right.
Oh, in the woods, we have to fight off the right, the left, the middle, the Russians, the Israelis, the Saudis, etc. Yeah, that's the woods, baby.
Right.
But we were born in those woods.
I mean,
that's freedom.
I hear you, Cenk. I've seen too much. I mean, you know what the incentives are. Like, the incentives are to feed the algorithm, the incentives are to feed your audience whatever they want to hear. The incentives are to be, ever more in your own bubble. And a lot of the incentives are the same, like, access-driven ones and corruption-driven ones as the mainstream press. There's a reason why you and I didn't get interviews with Kamala Harris, because she knows we would have asked her some tough questions.
Of course.
Right? There's a reason.
But who gives a damn about getting interviewed with Kamala Harris?
I'm just saying.
I am Kamala Harris.
But a lot of people,
I'm not interested in interviewing a corporate robot anyway.
But Cenk, my point is that a lot of people do care about that, which is why, so much of right-wing media is just like, basically sucking off Trump and whatever he says and towing the line, because they want to maintain that access. They want to maintain, their funding and their money, and they want to feed their audience whatever they want to be fed. And so, again, there's a possibility here, and I don't want to quash that. I think it's really important, and it excites me. In the same respect, like, I'm clear-eyed about what a cesspool a lot of independent media, frankly, is at this point. And so there's, I guess, a caution that I have about it as well.
Krystal, nobody knows that better than me, right? We've been doing this for 22 years.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
So we started when the internet was a nice place. That's how old we are, okay? So longest running show in internet history, first YouTube partner, you know all that, right?
Yeah.
So my point is that I have gone through all of those different things, and I'm perfectly aware of that. I'm not at all naive about it.
I know,
right?
Yeah.
But let me ask you a question back.
Okay.
You and I both worked at MSNBC.
Yeah.
So we've worked in establishment media, and we've worked online media.
Yeah.
What do you prefer?
Oh, definitely online media.
See?
But I'll tell you, Cenk, we've made some very specific decisions here, which is we don't do that. We will never talk to an advertiser. We don't do ad reads. We, have tried to intentionally create our business to avoid as much as possible, and we're still human beings, but as much as possible, some of the, the pressures, the incentives, et cetera, that I think have led to, most of the media ecosystem being not that great. And I think, that's, I know you guys have made some of those choices in your own ways, not exactly the same ones that we have, but most people, like, the money's green, and, they want me to read this ad for, like, the bald coddlers or whatever it is, and I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to look into that product, and if later down the road there's some problem with the product, I'm not going to cover it, because then I'm going to have a problem with my funders. Like, I think because we've made some specific decisions here, it has given us a lot of freedom, but I don't necessarily see those same incentives, playing out across all of independent media, which has created, as much as I would love for us to be the model for everyone, that's not the reality of most of what exists out there.
Yeah, but so, Krystal, I agree with you on all of that. Again, stipulate to all the facts, right? But at least we've got a fighter's chance in online media. Yeah. And what has our perseverance shown, TYT as a network, right?
Yeah.
It's shown that when you buck all the tides and you don't take the obvious money, you don't serve those corporate interests, and you get attacked by every side imaginable, right? Establishment, right wing, left wing, everyone has attacked us.
Yeah.
And yet we're still the largest. So now that's not just to brag or anything. There's a real point in there, which is, yes, but the audience values the truth. And so as difficult as it is day to day, oh, somebody lied about you, you lost a part of your audience. So someone else lied about you, you lost a part of your audience. But you still keep going and going and going. And those guys, they all fall off. They all fall off.
Daily Wire is way bigger than us, and they're propagandists.
Yeah, but Daily Wire has gotten an enormous amount of money from corporate interests.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
So, but Krystal, that's in the short run. No, that's in the short run.
I mean, that's just
Krystal, I'm
that's
also
just like
a business
new
person.
establishment media. I mean, they're not bucking the system, right? They're just a new version on a different platform of effectively Fox News.
I know, but Krystal, I'm a business person, and I can see that those models are unworkable in the long run. Basically, what the right-wing billionaires are doing is they have a marketing budget, right? And their marketing budget goes to things like other right-wing media, right? Online right-wing media. And I get it, and that's a big reservoir of money that the left doesn't have at all, right? And so it's so ironic when they're like, Soros controls everything. Have you guys checked into how right-wing media gets financed, okay? Let alone the fact that Soros hasn't helped us a dime, right? As far as I don't know about you guys, but not us,
definitely.
Right? And so I get all that, but they don't have margins. It's not a real business, okay? It's not a real business if you have to rely on, as Dennis Prager does, $23 million a year from right-wing billionaires, right? That's just a short-term marketing operation. Whereas building a real business where people actually value what you're doing, value the truth, that is sustainable in the long run, and we've proven that.
Yeah.
So look, the last thing on Trump, in terms of why,
and then I want to talk some about Elon. If you don't,
no, I don't mind at all. But like
minutes, right?
on why I'm not despondent as I was in 2016. Okay. So there's the right wing base, but there's one other thing with Trump. He loves being popular. So you got to get one decent person in the room to show him how to be popular, because I don't think he knows how. He's just grasping at straws. He's blind, right? He keeps doing A/B testing. He's like, okay, what's more popular, being pro-immigrant or anti-immigrant? He did that like back in 2015. He went on a radio tour, and he's like, pro-immigrant? No, that's not. Oh, okay, anti-immigrant. Oh yeah, okay, people like that, right?
Yeah.
So, but paid family leave is popular. Healthcare is popular. Higher wages is popular, and the right-wing populists like all that. Anti-war, anti-corruption. Those are all popular. And the right-wing populists agree with the left-wing populists. So there is an area of possible agreement there that could get something done that the establishment would never do. The establishment would never be anti-war. They would never be anti-corruption. They would be never anything positive. So like, we've broken out of that prison, and that prison was the worst place in the world, and it was filled with nothing but gaslighting about the American people suck and the donors are the greatest, and the politicians are honest.
I just don't know who is going to be that voice, number one, because his administration has largely been filled with, almost, with a few exclusions, I think the labor secretary is a notable one, but with almost all like sort of right-wing ideologues. And number two, I guess part of what I'm grappling with as well is if you go down the list of issues, I'm all for a horseshoe, and I think there are some areas there, to work with Josh Hawley or work with, it used to be Marco Rubio, actually was kind of interesting on some of the economic stuff. Like Matt Gaetz also was interesting on some of the economics. All for horseshoe, working with elected representatives, et cetera. But if you go down the list, I think you and I are mostly ideologically in the same place. I'm sure we have some differences, but I think we're by and large ideologically in the same place.
Yep.
If I go down a list, I am on almost every issue closer to the Kamala Harris Democrat than I am to the Donald Trump Republican. Whether it's healthcare or wages or labor or any of these things. And so that's what's that's what's a little bit like dissonant for me is, if we're caring about the policy outcomes, I think I'm much more likely to get improvement, not the things we would want, like Medicare for all, but much more likely to get improvement on the policy outcomes that I would want to see from a Kamala Harris. So react to that, but also, like, are you saying that you're actively happy that Trump beat her at this point?
No, but what I was going to say is, since I agree with you ideologically that I'm closer to the theoretical Kamala Harris positions, that's why I voted for Kamala Harris instead of Donald Trump. And I'm worried that Donald Trump, again, never called him a Nazi, never called him Hitler, but fascist is another word for authoritarian, right? And so, I'm worried that Donald Trump's an authoritarian, so that's why I voted, and he said to terminate the Constitution. That's why I voted for Kamala Harris. Okay. So now, having said that, now that he has won, right? I would have preferred an actual populist instead of what I view to be a fake populist, right? But now that he has won, there is a tiny ray of hope that did not exist in the establishment prison.
Okay, I hear that.
So last thing on that is, I'll give you a specific example. Paid family leave. Is Trump likely to do it? No, of course not, right? So, and was Kamala Harris going to do it? No, of course not, okay? No, there's
I think you had a better
0%
chance with her then.
No, I totally disagree. That's where I disagree. The establishment never wavers. They will do what corporate donors tell them, not 99% of the time, 100% of the time.
That's not true.
It is 100%
But Cenk, I can give you
I will debate you on any issue.
Okay, I'll give you some specific examples from the Biden administration,
Okay,
which is
can't wait.
antitrust, Lena Khan.
Yeah.
Right? The Wall Street Journal hated him for that. The billionaires hated him for that. I mean, that was a big pressure campaign they put on Kamala Harris to make sure she got rid of Lena Khan, etc. So he was the most pro-labor president we have had in our lifetimes.
That is the lowest bar there is.
Of course, but these are two areas where the donors did not want this, right? And his National Labor Relations Board, the general counsel, Jennifer Abruzzo, genuinely sort of revolutionary in her approach. They ended captive audience meetings, for one example. A lot of the decisions she made helped to enable this grassroots labor organizing surge. And so, that was a break from neoliberalism. Now, he has destroyed any possible positive legacy with genocide in Gaza and all kinds of other things besides, and being so arrogant and not getting out of the way, et cetera. But he did break with what the billionaires wanted and what the donors wanted in a few key areas. And I think we are that is not going to happen with Trump. Trump has already handed so much government power, and this will help us transition to Elon Musk with this DOGE thing. I mean, Elon is not only the richest man on the planet, but he also has massive multi-billions of dollars in government contracts. He's one of the Pentagon's largest contractors. And whether it's Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or whoever, I, as a matter of principle, object to rule by billionaires, rule by unelected billionaires. And this is like the most clear manifestation of that I've ever seen.
So for Biden and Obama, what they do is a release valve, right? Mm-hmm. So they'll give you 5 to 10% change.
Sure.
And I would argue that Biden at his height actually did 15% of his agenda. So for Democrats, that's like record breaking. We're only lying 85% of the time.
No, I agree with that.
Okay. So they say, well, look, we gave you a little release valve so you don't do a revolution. We gave you Lena Khan. We gave you a decent National Labor Relations Board. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, we didn't give you the PRO Act. Don't be ridiculous. We're not going to actually promise.
But how many Democrats supported the PRO Act and how many Republicans?
No, but that's my point. That's my point. Krystal, those Democrats are liars. They don't actually support the PRO Act. They don't actually support any of those policy positions. Giant, enormous liars. So you saw it on $15 minimum wage. Oh, we're for $15 minimum wage. And Joe Biden's like, get it out of the goddamn bill, right? He said it in the first interview in the Super Bowl. He said, oh, no, we can't do $15 minimum wage. Why? And I remember talking to people in Congress saying, oh, Cenk, what are you worried about? It's guaranteed. It's guaranteed. Nancy Pelosi told us it's guaranteed, right? And what did we do? We forced a vote on it. And what happened? 8 sellout Democratic senators voted against the $15 minimum wage, including the 2 Biden senators.
And how many Republicans voted against it?
No, but Krystal, I stipulate that the Republicans are totally corrupt.
But are you? Because it seems like you're saying that you're more likely to get something real out of them than you are out of the Democrats. And look, I'm clear-eyed about the Democrats. I've been plenty critical of them in their many failings. But I just don't think that's true. And part of it is that Democrats get significant funding from labor unions, and that's a part of their coalition. And so that's part of why that's part of why they have been more, they have just, the Biden administration in particular was pretty consistently pro-labor. And I think they deserve, some credit for that. And
we did drag him to the picket line. And he finally makes it to a picket line. Everybody's like, oh my God, a Democrat didn't lie 100% of the time. I'm not trying to say the Democrats
are perfect, but Donald Trump is a strikebreaker. He bragged. He went to Elon Musk and was like, isn't that awesome how you fired these striking workers?
But Krystal,
he has been a union buster his entire career. His first NLRB and labor secretary were horrendous. But it kind of feels like you are.
No. Look, let's be super clear about it.
Yeah.
Right? So if you say to me, establishment Republicans suck, I agree 200%. But The Republican populist base that elected Trump did a revolution against Mitch McConnell. Did a revolution against that establishment.
Because he was anti-Trump, not because of his corporate whatever. Trump passed the biggest tax cut for rich people ever.
Nevertheless, the establishment Republicans are defeated and humiliated, and I love it. Okay,
I don't think they are, Cenk. Marco Rubio is Secretary of State.
But let's see what happens with the right-wing base when he goes to start that war. We're going to find out.
Yeah.
So no, here I'll give you two specific examples.
Okay.
Number one, on paid family leave. Neither one of them is likely to do it. And no, I'm not thinking that everything is rainbows and sunshine and, oh my God, Trump's going to be amazing. No, he is more likely to do what he has done in the past. And what he has done in the past is bad to terrible. Okay?
Correct. Yes.
So I've got that at about 75%. Everyone else has it at 99 or 100% that is on our side, right? And I think that that is wrong. I think there's a 25% chance that that right-wing base and his desire for popularity makes a difference. I think with corporate Democrats, you would have never, ever gotten paid family leave, even though it polls at 84%. They're enormous liars. All they have to do is introduce it and it passes, right? So the fact that they know that they can just introduce it and have it pass, and they won't do it anyway, shows you they are hopeless. They are 100% donor-driven, and every once in a while, release valve. Okay, so on the pressure, but on the Republican side, if you convince Donald Trump that paid family leave will make him more popular, he'll do it overnight because he doesn't care about Mitch McConnell.
There's a bunch of right-wing ideologues around it. I mean, this is the thing. It's
I know there's ideologues, but then what are you going to do? Give up hope?
You just can't. No, but you have to be.
And then let's talk about the Pentagon.
No, but let's talk about the Pentagon because I do think that's an interesting point of conversation. If I look at how many Democrats support the PRO Act and how many Republicans, if I look at how many Democrats support paid family leave and how many Republicans, I'm not saying the Democrats are great, but I am saying that release valve is vastly superior to, with Trump, you're going to get some level of extremely cruel border policy, which is going to cause unbelievable pain to a number of people. You are going to probably get West Bank annexation and more brutality in the Middle East. And so I just can't sort of, I'll have a hope and a prayer that maybe something positive will come out somewhere. I'm just clear-eyed about, I think there's going to be a lot of pain and cruelty and unnecessary suffering caused by this administration. So that's why it's hard for me to relate to a sense of optimism about the possibility, even as, again, I'm all for a good horseshoe. If there's an issue, Bernie Sanders has done this also working with, I think, Josh Hawley on stimulus checks. Do it, great, get what you can. But also, like I said before, I think what's likely to happen, the most likely outcome is just things are going to get overall worse, and that's kind of where I am.
Look, I don't know how many times I can repeat it before people believe me. I know Donald Trump has done terrible things in the past. That's why I fought tooth and nail against him in all of the elections. Right?
Yeah.
I know what is more likely. I know how awful the Republicans have been in the past.
Right.
Okay, the only point of disagreement is I think some of those right-wing voters are not as horrific as you think they are.
Oh, I don't think the voters are horrific. I don't think that at all. I think that there is no track record of them, constraining Donald Trump, holding him to account. He has become the central figure in the Republican Party. And, however he wants to spin things, whatever case he wants to make, what I have seen is people consistently, even in this era, even with new parts of the coalition, et cetera, I have seen them fall in line. And that's where the RFK Jr. and the Tulsi example comes in.
I get it. So if I said to you, who is more likely to cut the Pentagon? Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, or Donald Trump?
None.
Okay.
I mean, Donald Trump increased the defense budget every year that he was in office.
Of course, and he bragged about it.
Yes.
Okay. So I agree that none of them are likely to cut it. But with Trump, because of his right-wing base and his desire for popularity, I have it at possible. With Biden and Harris, it had a 0% chance because they work for the goddamn donors. They would never cut the military.
But so does Trump.
Yeah.
Cenk,
so look,
he went to oil executives and was like, "Give me $1 billion and I'll do whatever you want me to do."
Krystal, you don't have to convince me of that.
Totally flipped on crypto.
Crypto's going to be a disaster. You don't have to convince me of that. But let me see if I can break through one last time.
Okay.
So if Biden said, if Kamala Harris had won and she developed a conscience, which is nearly impossible, and said, you know what, this Pentagon is bloated. Look at all this fraud and abuse. They can't find $400 billion. That's it. I'm cutting $200 billion from the Pentagon. Even if she had done that, which had a 0% chance, the Democrats would have stopped her. Not just the Republicans, but the Democrats would have found a way to stop her and not allow her to cut the Pentagon. So there was no hope at all, a black hole of hope, okay? With Trump, if the Republicans go to stop him, if he goes to cut the Pentagon, they won't be able to. If Mitch McConnell goes and Rick Scott goes, you won't cut the Pentagon, Trump will be like, what did you say, bitch? Okay? I mean, Mitch. Okay, right? And Mitch McConnell will be like, oh, I'm so sorry, we're cutting the Pentagon, everybody, we're cutting the Pentagon. Because Trump has them bullied. That is another advantage of Trump, that he could bully the establishment,
so
the grotesque establishment.
So
that
his
has led
sort of
to all
authoritarian
of these
tendencies, jiu-jitsu move, end up being a benefit. Is your position. We will see. I do want to just quickly, because we've already gone on a long time, I don't want to keep you too long, but I do want to talk a little bit about the Elon thing, and we can put up the Bernie Sanders tweet. You had like reached out to Elon like, hey, I'll help you cut the Pentagon budget if you're serious about this. Bernie Sanders says something similar. Elon Musk is right. The Pentagon just failed its 7th audit. That must change, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, I would like to see the Pentagon's budget cut. I will tell you, like I said, I am all for working with the elected representatives, as Bernie has done in the past with Josh Hawley and others on areas of agreement, totally fine with. Maybe my core litmus test, and you and I were talking about this before, like if I was to design the Democratic Party from scratch, the litmus test would all be around economics, and there would be a larger tent around cultural issues, even as I, personally have mostly lefty issues on positions on cultural issues. But pretty core litmus test for me is we shouldn't be allowing unelected billionaires to effectively run the government. And so on this particular issue, I do come down in a different place than you, because I think this project of giving Elon Musk, richest man on the planet, one of the Pentagon's largest contractors, who's embroiled in all sorts of regulatory disputes around labor violations and environmental degradation and SEC violations, giving him carte blanche to remake the government however he wants to, like just out of principle, I think that's a project overall that should be opposed.
Yeah, so totally agree. But that's not where we are. So let's talk about the agreement, and then let's talk about what to do going forward.
Okay.
So this is what I told the Republicans and the right-wing voters and the independents before the election. Look, Donald Trump openly brags about his corruption. He goes, I used to be against electric vehicles, but then Elon gave me a very strong endorsement.
Right,
so now I'm
so
for
here we
that.
are, yeah.
I'm like, you just admitted that you are the swamp, right? And so, and he brags about, oh, Sheldon Adelson gave me a strong endorsement back in 2016 and 2020. That means $100 million in both races, right?
Yep.
So he said, so I moved the embassy for him. You just admitted that you gave U.S. foreign policy to a donor. And he's now done that with Miriam Adelson. He's saying, oh yeah, I'll start any war Israel wants because Miriam gave me $137 million.
Yep.
On TikTok, he was even more brazen. He was like, I was against TikTok, tried to get a ban. But Jeff Yass gave me a strong endorsement.
That's right. Crypto, same deal.
Yeah, and so now I'm for TikTok, right? So he admits his corruption in spectacular fashion. It's unbelievable. Would I allow Elon Musk in an ideal world to basically have power over at least half the government just because he's one of the top donors to Donald Trump? No, I don't want billionaire donors in charge of the government, right? So that is clear and obvious. And I hope one day right-wing populists finally realize, oh, maybe billionaire donors aren't our friends. Maybe that they're rigging the rules not to our benefit, but to their benefit, right? So I understand and stipulate to all that. But nevertheless, Trump won. And here's Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who are going to be in charge
Both
of this.
Billionaires,
yeah, who are going to be in charge of this department, whatever the hell this department is, which is really the whole government, right?
Right, that's right.
And so I say half the government, but it's not. It's the whole government. And so how do I make the best of it? Well, we've always wanted to cut the Pentagon, right? So if they're looking to make cuts, I suggest the idea of cutting the Pentagon. Now, normally that's where it would end. Especially if I said that to Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, they'd be like, get out of here, you loser, online media, populist loser.
They wouldn't
no
even
way,
notice.
No way, right?
Joe Biden doesn't know how to log into Twitter.
Yeah, so they'd be like, no way. They'd go and give a general a handy. That's and be like, oh no, don't worry, General, don't worry. Joe Biden's here to protect you, right? And so would Mitch McConnell. So would every dirtbag Republican, right? So, but here, Elon Musk and Donald Trump Jr. said, maybe maybe we do that, right? Maybe we do. Then I suggested a conflict of interest rule where the generals can't be go work for defense contractors afterwards, right? And why did Elon? This is the important part I'm trying to get through to you guys.
Yeah.
Why did Elon and Donald Trump Jr. go, all right, Cenk, attaboy? Not a thing they would normally say.
Because they like saying, even lefty Cenk Uygur agrees with the Department of Government Efficiency. That's why.
And so, Krystal, I totally get that.
Yeah.
And I understand that that's part of their motivation.
Yeah.
But the main motivation was not that. The main motivation is because on X, they could see all of their base going, yes, 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 yes.
Because their base also likes even lefty Cenk Uygur is on board with the Department of Government Efficiency. Like, I understand where you're coming from. I understand where Bernie's coming from of like, listen, this is the world and we have to deal with it and we're gonna get what we can get. If you're talking about an elected representative, I am 100% on board with all of that. With this specific project, I think it's dangerous to normalize giving billionaires this level of control over the government. And your willingness to engage with it, which again, I understand where you're coming from. I'm not saying like you're bad or evil or like whatever for doing it. But I think this level of engagement gives this project of total billionaire control over the federal government a sense of bipartisan legitimacy and creates the appearance that genuinely beneficial things are going to come out of it, when I do not think that genuinely beneficial things are going to come out of it overall, even if there are things that they cut that you and I would both be like, okay, that's fine that they cut that. Because look, Elon Musk, he is himself one of the largest Pentagon contractors. He has all of these massive conflicts of interest. This is a project like any, normal like Koch brothers type right-wing project to strip the capability of the government so that it's less able to regulate and constrain robber barons like Elon Musk or any other of the billionaire class that has rigged the economy. And so that's why in this specific instance, I think it's more important to just oppose the project outright and try to explain to people why this is a really pernicious development in our nation's history versus giving it some credibility by being like, oh, look, they might do some good things and they might work with me on this or that proposal.
So totally agree, totally disagree.
Okay.
The part I agree on is, yeah, it's a pernicious project. I don't want to validate billionaires running the government, donors running the government. That was the problem with the establishment in the first place, right? And yes, Elon Musk has enormous conflicts of interest, not just with the Pentagon. He wants to get rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Why? Because they're the cops on Wall Street.
And the NLRB.
And why do they want to get rid of that? Because it serves his billionaire interests, right? So I hope to God, I know it's a tough task, but get the right-wing populists to realize he's another donor. Wake up, he's a donor. And he wants to get rid of the cops that are regulating him,
That's right?
And so
he wants to defund the police, just the white-collar police.
That's literally the analogy I use. He wants to defund the police on Wall Street, right? And and some people online think, oh, Cenk, are you going to call him out on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau? Of course! Consumer Financial Protection Bureau saves $20 for every dollar we spend on it. They get back $20 billion for every $1 billion we spend. But not only that, the $20 billion is money that the bankers stole from us, right? And they admit that they stole it, and that's why they pay those fines, et cetera. So it's actually the best part of the government. I agree with all of that. But they are in charge. We did lose. So like on immigration, I agree with you. They're going to do some awful things on immigration that I don't agree with. But the voters did kind of vote for that, okay? And we have to be cognizant of that, right? I know. But the voters didn't vote for a giant war in the Middle East. They didn't. They voted against that, not for that, right? The voters did vote against corruption at large. Yeah, maybe they got misdirected by Trump, right? But they still hate corruption at their core. So if you can make them see the corruption. Now, in the midst of all of that, though, if you say me, Ro Khanna, and Bernie Sanders shouldn't legitimize this and instead should go, hey, you know what, cut Medicare and Medicaid first. Don't worry about the Pentagon. Don't worry about the conflicts of interest. Don't worry about cutting the Pentagon. Cut the best parts of the budget first. No.
I guess where you and I disagree is I just do not believe that they actually are serious about like any positive I don't believe they're going to cut the Pentagon, period. And so that I think that may be partly why I come down in a different place, but also my position really is that with this particular project, because it is so pernicious to just give carte blanche to a group of billionaires with massive conflicts of interest, like some of the largest conflicts of interest you can imagine, I think, to me, the most important approach to that is just to oppose it. But I understand where I get where you're coming from, Cenk.
Can I want to address something to the audience. Can I?
Sure.
Is this my camera here? Okay, yeah. So right-wing populists, it is now your job to prove Krystal wrong. Okay?
Go out and do it, y'all.
So she doesn't believe you. And by the way, almost no one on the left, other than me and Anna, believe you guys that you actually want to cut the Pentagon. And that you could pressure Elon Musk and Donald Trump to cut the Pentagon. So are you going to prove the left wrong, or are you going to prove them spectacularly right? Am I going to have to come on here and apologize to Krystal for ever believing in any right-wing populist and say, oh, I was a sucker, those guys were liars, all they want to do was increase the Pentagon, have more wars, more corruption, and they never held Trump accountable. We waited 4 long years for them to hold him accountable, and all they did was kiss his ass and show that they don't really believe in freedom. They said all this stuff about freedom, but they never meant it. Mm-hmm. They said all this stuff about drain the swamp, but they never meant it. They said all this anti-war stuff, but they never meant it. We're going to come back on here in 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, and we're going to keep doing a check. So if right-wing populists are frauds, I'm going to say, Krystal, you were right. There were frauds all along, okay?
Well,
but I don't think so. I think they actually mean it.
Let me just say, we already have some examples. So I'll give you one, and then we can wrap things. I'll give you the final word, and we can wrap things up here. But RFK Jr. put in at HHS, or nominated to be put in at HHS, talking a big game about getting bad stuff out of the food system. I agree with you. Agree with that. Taking on big ag, et cetera. Trump just put in at the FDA for the USDA and at the FDA a Brooke Rollins, who's a total corporate, big ag, she'll be ag secretary, big ag shill. Now, RFK had come with a list of here's who I want to help me in my project. And he's like, nah, I'm going to go with the lady who's going to be friendly to big ag interests. Have you heard a word? Have you heard RFK Jr. come out? Have you heard any of his followers come out and be like, oh my God, they're going back on Maha already? No. And so that's why I am highly skeptical that you're going to see any level of expectant, consistent adherence to principle and holding of account of Donald Trump, because I just have never seen that before. Remember, before he ran in 2016, he said he was going to give everybody health care, and then he didn't, and everyone was just like, yeah, that's fine. So I see no indication that it will be at all different this time around. And I see a lot of indications that it will actually be worse, because he will be more unchained and given more freedom to pursue his absolute worst and most authoritarian instincts, thanks to the Supreme Court's decision and the effort that was engaged in the offseason to get the most ideological sycophants put into positions of power and to bring everybody to heel this time around.
Yeah. I see the same indications you do of the bad impulses.
Yeah.
But I see an indication of good impulses from the right-wing voters that you do not see. So, for example, on Team Israel, Rubio, Stefanik, et cetera.
Nefarious. I just think they're busy. They're busy, and they've decided to trust this guy, and they're just going to trust this guy.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. I think you're wrong. What I have seen is they don't like Team Israel, because Team Israel is Team War, Team Neocon, et cetera.
That's just not what the polling suggests.
And so,
most Republicans are Team Israel.
Okay, all right, let's find out.
Republican base.
We're going to find out.
If you look at the polling, Democrats overwhelmingly were in favor of a ceasefire and in favor of an arms embargo. Republicans are, I think, in favor of a ceasefire, but they are not in favor of an arms embargo. They are much more favorable as a group. There are some exceptions, but as a group towards Israel. And so, I don't want to belabor that point in particular, because I know you're making a broader point about a variety of issues.
And on Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, I've seen pushback on that. I've seen pushback on some some nominees that I've never seen among Republicans before. So, and maybe that pushback is a mirage. And I'm not expecting it right out of the gate. Don't get me wrong. I'm not expecting right-wing populists to rise up and go, Kash Patel is a lunatic and we're not in favor of him.
No, they love him.
Yeah, they love him. I get it. I get that. So those are the bad impulses. I see it. I'm not unaware of it. But I'm also seeing actual anti-corruption, anti-war impulses. And I would rather feed those good impulses than to say, we hate you all. I never want to talk to you guys. I don't trust you. And I think you're only going to do evil in the world. I don't think that's productive.
I also don't think it's true. I just want to say, just to make it really clear, when I'm being critical of the elites, the Trumps, the Elon Musks, the Vivek Ramaswamis. This is not meant to slime, everybody who voted for it. And that's something I've really tried to be consistent about throughout the Trump era, and something Sagar and I have really tried to engage with. I'm just, I think what we've seen in the past is likely to be what we see in the future.
So let's see if the right-wing bros, the right-wing populists, the Rogans of the world, if they have any integrity at all. We're going to find out, right? And are they going to hold Trump accountable? Or are you right and the rest of the left right that they're not going to hold him accountable at all, and they're going to let him be a runaway freight train of disaster?
Rogan is supposedly going to go do some shows in Mar-a-Lago, so we'll see if he asks any challenging questions about the principles there. But we may find out pretty quickly here, Cenk.
Okay, so last thing I'll say on the Democrats is, so you're right, the establishment is going to strike back, right? So if there's one takeaway from this, it's not from this whole conversation. It's not about Trump. It's not about the right-wing populists. It's that for Democrats, do not let your guard down. They're going to bring back Gavin Newsom and Pete Buttigieg and all the corporate robots.
Absolutely.
Okay. We need the only thing that could defeat right-wing populism is left-wing populism. Okay. Or we join forces on some issues. Great, wonderful, right? But if you go back the establishment route, that is a dead end. It has forget whether you're progressive or you're more conservative Democrat or more corporate Democrat. Put that aside. They have no chance of winning. It's over. It's over. They're going to run into that brick wall 100 times. Yep. And Scarborough and the View are going to lie to you every time. Oh, you got to pick the corporate guy. The corporate guy is the one who's the only one who can win, right? Do not let them lie to you in that 2028 primary. It is imperative that we pick a populist left-winger in 2028. Otherwise, we have no chance of retaking the White House.
Yeah, well, and not even just no chance of retaking the White House, but no chance of really delivering for people. And
100%.
Ultimately, I don't give a shit whether the Democratic Party wins or loses. That's, I think what you and I, where we find common ground is I actually want to make life easier and better for people in this country. So, Cenk, love you, brother. Always great to see you. Glad to see you in town here.
Thank
Although
you,
I do feel bad for you. What is LA? Is probably like in the 70s right now. It's fucking cold as hell here right now. So I don't know what you're thinking about.
Well, I'm going to Florida next to do Patrick Bet-David.
All right. There you go.
I'm going to relax for 2 days before heading back to LA. But it's freezing out here. But I'm warmed by our conversation and the love in this room.
All right. Thank you, Cenk. And thank you guys so much for watching. And I will see you. Counterpoints will be in tomorrow, and we'll see you back here on Thursday.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.